Hi, zoology. Okay, we have a set of notes. They're over a new phylum, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Don't waste any time. Make sure that these go into your virtual notebook, and then I'll have a little tiddly bit at the end. Okay, share my screen. All right, so this is our new phylum. It's Phylum Annelida. It also can be pronounced Annelida. I like Annelida. So Phylum Annelida. A little bit of history, some background knowledge. They've been around for 518 million years. That's when the last fossil record was found. There's about 9,000 different species, but some of them have still yet to be discovered because they live in some marine ecosystems that we just haven't been able to explore or get to. So there definitely could be more out there. They're classified as invertebrates. Nothing we've seen so far has had a backbone yet or a spine, so they're inverts, and they do live basically everywhere except the sky. They can be found in the ground, in freshwater, and in saltwater. And the three classes that we're going to be looking at today have a foot in every single spot. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is their body plan, because it's kind of quintessential to what makes these worms specific. So in Platyhelminthes, we called them the flatworms because they were flat. In Nematoda, they were known as the roundworms because their body has come out of that flat structure and now is nice and round. And these worms are known as our segmented worms because they have segmentation that's specific to this phylum. This phylum, their segments are repeating, so they're throughout the entire body, but also it's divided by this ring that goes through the entire body. So it's transversing the whole worm's structure. These rings allow for effective specialization of some organs. So in one of the segments, it could be completely devoted to reproduction. In another segment, that could be completely devoted to sensory. Another one could be devoted to digestion. So there's a lot of benefits that come from having these specific segmentations, along with providing a lot of structural support. I don't mention it later on, but I thought it would be good to mention now. Each of the structures or each of the segments have their own muscle units, so they can move the segments independently. It's kind of cool. Another part of their body plan is the eucoelum. So we talked about this a little bit yesterday and why it was superior to all the other types of coelums. It allows for this worm to move and to digest at the same time. They no longer have to choose between one or the other because they have two sets of muscle groups, one that lines the endoderm and one that lines the ectoderm. So now we can do both. We can multitask. It's really great for us. They're also protostomes. We talked about that yesterday too in terms of development. That means that the mouth is the first thing that develops. So when they're just a ball of cells, the first hole that is made for the gut is the mouth. And last but not least, they have three tissue layers. So they have an endoderm, mesoderm, and ectoderm. The three, that's called triploblastic if you want to be super specific, but we're not going to. Some specialized structures, they have more than this, but I wanted to highlight these as the special structures that we're going to pay attention to. So first, they have a hydrostatic skeleton. A hydrostatic skeleton is what, like if you think about the word hydro means water. So it uses water pressure to help not only stay rigid, but also to allow for movement. This second characteristic or second structure is called setae. The setae are little hair-like projections on the sides of the worms. They either use them to help swim through the ocean, or to help as little hooks. They like hook into the dirt and pull forward, hook into the dirt and pull forward. So they're helpful for locomotion. But this word chitin, I wanted to talk about that. So chitin is a specific type of sugar, and that sugar is actually really, really strong. When we talk about insects, we're going to talk about their exoskeleton and how that's made, some of it's made of chitin. And so if you think about like stepping on a beetle and you hear that crunch, that is the sugar that's breaking. So chitin is actually really, really, really strong. The nephridia is like the kidneys, So it filters out waste that's inside the body and then gets rid of it. Brain and nerve cord, I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory. And then the aortic arches, those are the hearts. They have 5 hearts. They're very active. So they have 5 hearts that help them circulate oxygen through their bodies. It is really, really important that these organisms stay in an area with high moisture. So if you've ever seen worms on the sidewalk in the summertime and they're all dried out and crusty, that's because they are no longer moist, and they actually have suffocated. All right. Moving on. Okay, so now we're going to talk about their complete digestion. They have a full digestive system, goes from mouth to anus, but they have 2 special structures in here that I wanted to distinguish and point out. They have a crop, which is a kind of like a stomach, but not really, and it stores food. It's very flabby, so when we get to our dissection, I'll point out the crop and you'll see that when I poke it, gives pretty easily. And they also have a gizzard, which has rocks and different particles inside of it that grind up the food that it ingests. Because they don't have teeth, they can't grind it up to begin with, so that happens inside the gizzard. And that's actually a very strong muscular organ, because it has to contract in order to move that food particle and the rocks and different particles to grind that up around. As far as reproduction, they are hermaphroditic, so they have both male and female sex organs. And when they're laying their eggs on earth or on the ground, they want to make sure that they don't dry out, because if they dry out, then they die. So they form a slime capsule. What happens is the eggs get laid into the slime capsule by one of the worms, and then another worm comes on top and like fertilizes them, and then baby worms are hatched. Super easy. All right, now for the classes. Like I said, there are 3 classes that we're going to go over. So class number 1 is class Oligochaetae. So Oligochaetae, oligo means short and chaetae means hairs. So they are short-haired. They are earthworms. They're super good for the environment, because not only do they get rid of dead and dying plant matter because they're decomposers, but also their feces are fertilizers. So feces is called castings. And they also create burrows inside the soil, which allows for air to get in and really helps roots and different plants thrive. So if your garden is full of earthworms, it is such a healthy garden, and it's really, really lovely. All right, class 2 is called Polychaetae. So poly means many, and chaetae means hairs, like I said. So this one has many hairs on its body. It actually has 2 sets for every segment in its body, so it's just full. The common name is bristleworms, and these guys are actually found, I didn't write it down, but I will. Oops, my fault. These ones are marine animals. So they're found in the ocean. They have parapodia, which para means paired, and podia means feet. So they have paired feet for every segment, and those they twist like this to help them swim. And then it's also used for gas exchange, so it helps bring O2 into their bodies. Oops. All right, and our last class is class Hirudinae. Class Hirudinae are known as the leeches. That's their common name. They aren't very round like how earthworms are. They're more flat, and they're parasitic. So we all know and think of what leeches are. They have a front sucker on their head, which allows them to break through the skin and get to the blood material. They also have a rear sucker, which allows them to stabilize on the organism's body. Their saliva inside their mouth contains two things, which allows them to just like let the blood flow and let them consume as much blood as they can. Their segments allow them to stretch very wide, that they can consume 2 to 5 times the size of their body in blood. Like it's impressive how much they can expand. But they have an anticoagulant, which makes the blood stop clotting, and they have an anesthetic, which stops you from feeling the pain of the bite. So they are very good at getting as much blood as they possibly can. And yeah, so those are leeches. There are a few pictures in here. They don't have setae like the other two classes do. Instead, their setae has been modified to be like hooks or teeth that will like latch into the skin and allow it to break the skin. But yeah, those are leeches and I love them. All right, that is all I have for you guys. I hope you learned a lot about Phylum Annelida, and I hope that you learned a lot. At the end of these notes, what I want from you to do is write a 2 to 3 sentence summary just over this phylum. What are some important things to remember? And then we'll convene back tomorrow for the diagrams. Bye, guys.